Welcome to Robert Cowen Investments' first webinar in our Generational Wealth Training webinar series. My name is Kate, for those who don't know me. I obviously work for Robert Cowen Investments. We thought it would be an ideal time to start a webinar series like this to educate our clients as well as their children and anyone else who might be interested on the importance of generational wealth and keeping the momentum going. With no further ado, I'd like to introduce Di Hayden, who will take you through our first webinar. We hope you enjoy, and if there are any questions afterwards, please feel free to pop us an email. Thanks, bye.
Good morning, everyone. Very nice to have you all with us. Thank you so much for joining us. And you'll be pleased to hear that I'm not doing every single webinar every single time. We are going to get all our staff involved. But I think the important thing is just to give you an overview of what it is that we want to cover. And then you can look at it and decide what it is you don't want to attend in terms of the series. But as an introduction, we thought we'd better just introduce you to RCI for those of you who don't know us. I think that most of you do. And there are a lot of clients and a lot of their children. So thank you very much for all joining us, and to all others who have decided that's maybe beneficial. We do hope that you find it so. And with no further ado on my part, here we go on the introduction. Eventually. I'm just getting the slides to move. There we go. Introduction. We've been in business since 1982, so we've been doing this for an awful long time. And the business, as you know, was started by Rob, and he's left a legacy and left all of us to follow behind and look after all of you and your investments. Assets under management currently are 5 billion rand. We look after 200 families, but most importantly, and what's relevant for this particular webinar and this series, we're looking after the fourth generation. I've actually recounted. It's the fifth generation, and I'll explain that now. So we do understand how generational wealth works and what you all need to know as you go through life. And what we concentrate on is making sure that it's all personalized for you and your family. So I think the most interesting thing here is where in the pecking order are all of you in the generational story. And the first thing we're going to look at are the baby boomers. If you look at the picture, you can see who they are. Unfortunately, I think it's a little unfortunate that Kate's chosen a picture with a walking stick, because some of us actually don't need a walking stick just yet. But you can see there what's important here. The baby boomers are the generation who are going to start to transfer the wealth. And that's why they're actually very important. So just to give you a synopsis, and we're going to go through all of you because we've got all sorts of generations on here so you understand what we're aiming to do. So you can see there when they were born a long time ago. They are a substantial portion of the world's population. They're very influential. And I think that they're at the age where they're starting to reach retirement, and they've got their own challenges. And I think what's the most important here is they are the wealthiest and most active generation. And they have the most disposable income. So they're very important in the retail sector and in terms of what they buy and don't buy and what they do. And a lot of them travel now. Some of us are still working. I'm a baby boomer, just so you know. And they are retiring later than everyone expected because of the economic recession of 2008. And you'll begin to get a sense of how the economies and what happens to them affect each of you and each generation as you go along. So after the baby boomers, we have Generation X. And the number of you, of our children, us baby boomers who are Generation X, you can see where you were born, and you are becoming very, very important to the economies. You are rising up through the ranks, and you are establishing your careers and entering your potential peak earnings. You are very self-sufficient. You're actually very adaptable because of what life has thrown at you, more so than baby boomers. And you're much more informal. And of course, you're much more technologically advanced than those of us who are baby boomers. But unfortunately for you, you're the first generation who's had a number of blows in terms of earning power and what's happened in economies. We had the dot-com bust of 2000. What happens then is everybody loses wealth. The financial crisis of 2008, which was probably the biggest that I've ever seen. And I think that the pandemic and what we're going through now has also had a severe impact on you and on the next generation that we're going to talk about. You can see in Kate's little picture there what's important to you, including gym. See those dumbbells there that you all use, or barbells or whatever they are. I don't use them, so I'm not quite sure. And then the next generation are millennials. And again, a lot of baby boomers have had millennials. You're also called Generation Y. You can see there when you were born. You do challenge the hierarchy you always have, ever since you were born almost. And again, you're very technologically aware, even more so than the previous generation. A problem, and maybe it's not so much here, but certainly in the States. I know you're all very highly educated, but in the States, they've concentrated on that. And in order to become educated, they've raised a huge amount of debt. So they're starting out life and starting out their working careers owing $1.4 trillion in debt that has to be paid back before they can earn anything. That has a severe impact on their wealth. Is there a problem? Oh, okay. And after the millennials, we have, Generation Z. You can see when they were born, and you can see by what that little person is doing on their phone. Obviously, everything is connected to their iPhones, their Huawei's, what are they called? Their Samsungs, your smartphones. You're also called Zoomers, and you're very diverse. And I think you're perhaps far more accepting than the generations before you, which I think is fantastic. And again, technologically, you are way, way ahead. It's just part of your lives. You do earn income already. You tend to have several sources of income, or you have the flexibility to do that because of the world around you and the technology that you're involved in. Apparently, you do worry about your financial future, and you prefer not to spend money. So you're not the generation that's going to buy a lot of brands, for instance, and you're very focused on doing good in the world and investing, as you can see there, in the environment, socioeconomic, and corporate governance is very important to you. Now, why is all of this important? Why do we have to understand where we fit, and why is that important to our particular series that we're rolling out for you? And the reason is this. If you look at that, the amount of wealth that's going to be transferred now from one generation to the other, we've had various figures thrown at us. We've put one of the figures up here, but it's estimated, and I'm using a wide range, but it's still trillions and trillions, between $30 and $68 trillion. So times that by 13.7 at the moment to get the number of rands. I don't think I even know how many noughts that is. Will move from the baby boomers to their heirs. It's the largest shift of wealth ever. And that's why we think this series is so important, that so you understand what's coming your way, how to prepare for it, and how you can be ready. But unfortunately, in this transfer of wealth that we are going to see, and it's already started, only 30%, so that's a third of that money, is transferred successfully. There are different reasons for that. Some of them are it's squandered, obviously. But one of the main reasons is that no one's concentrated on planning and making sure the wealth transfers with the minimal effect of things like squandering, tax, etc. And who will be inheriting? It'll be our Generation X, our millennials, and our Generation Z. They all have different focuses and they all will plan their different ways, but basically the rules are the same. So what we're hoping to achieve is this. We're looking at your wealth, and our aim is to educate all of you, those who are interested, and our clients, families, etc. And I would like to point out here that families are exceptionally important in this whole spectrum that we're discussing here. And as you go through life, your focus moves away from your basic family, your parents, your siblings, to your own family. And you will start to look after your own family, those of you who are Generation X and Generation Z. Yeah. Y. Generation Y, sorry, I get a bit confused. Just by the way, on the generations, we're now on to Generation Alpha, and those are the babies that are being born at the moment. So what will we be dealing with in order to make sure that this all happens according to how you plan it, hopefully with our assistance? We've got to deal with your estate. Your estate is what you own. Anything from toys when you were 7 years old, to your car, to your house, etc., etc. That is your estate. It's not something that applies on death. It applies now. It's what you own. And that's what you have to start looking after. So in the series and I'm not going to go into detail now, in the series now we will be concentrating on estates, what that actually means, how you need to count your money and what your money is invested in. Then we're going to go on to, do you have to have a will? What does it mean if you die intestate? You'll hear these words all bandied about, and it's very confusing. One doesn't always know, and we'd like you to know what all of that means. Where are you going to live? Are you going to be here? Are you going to be in Spain? Are you going to be in Japan? Are you going to be in the UK? Are you going to be in the US? Australia is a favorite destination, because wherever you are, the rules are different. Do you need a will in those jurisdictions? What applies in Europe? We'll cover all of that. What happens when you die? Is there a process that you have to go through? You won't be here, so somebody's got to understand what the process is. How you get married is unbelievably important. Do not underestimate when you're all starry-eyed and you're walking up that aisle and you're waiting at the other end for your bride. What is the contract that you have in place? It's actually very important, and we'll go into why. And then one not such happy little topic, when you die, you do have to have what's called a liquidation and distribution account. You have to count all your money and any bonds or liabilities you might have, and you have to produce what's called an account. It's all accounted for, and then after that, the process starts of winding up an estate. But your estate starts the day you're born and you start to own anything. So on that, we'll look at how do I plan for retirement, and that sneaks up on you so quickly. I can't believe that it's now 30 years and here I am, and I'm at an age where I could retire. Not that I'm going to, but it just happens so quickly and you need to be ready. So what's next? What we like to do, and this gets into the nitty-gritty of what you'll need to know and what it's important to understand. One needs to plan your estate. And very often what happens in life, you accumulate a whole lot of assets and it's not planned, and you have bits and pieces all over the place. And you can then look at putting those assets into structures so that you protect them from the effect of tax. Do you or don't you need life insurance? Where do pension funds fit into this picture? And we'll be covering all of those aspects so that you can see what it is that will apply to you or what you think will be important. So this is a journey that we're going to embark on. We're going to put it into about 6 different webinars, and hopefully there'll be more topics that you want to discuss. But what we'll also come across is structures. So you make all this money and your assets grow. Are you going to need to put it in a trust? I'm sure you've heard that word before. Are you going to need to put it in an endowment? What are the advantages of that? Do you want to own assets in your name or in your spouse's name? Do you have a business that you need to protect assets from? Is it important to save tax? And is estate duty an issue? Those are all questions that we will address. And what a lot of this will revolve around is for you as you go through life, how is it going to help your children? So I put an example here, and I've just used, it's a trust that we're using. And if you hold assets in trust or in own name, what would be the consequence over the generations? So there we've got a little chart. So go with me here. And we're saying that you now go through life and you make an amount of money and you accumulating your wealth where you see that green line. And then the blue line is when you've retired. So you start to use some of the money so it doesn't grow as fast as it did while you were accumulating it over all those years you were working. You then die and estate duty is paid. And that is the effect of estate duty at the current rate in South Africa. Or you can choose to put that money into trust. And within the trust, there are a large number of advantages, which we'll go into later, but basically you stop estate duty being paid. And there again, the red line, you accumulate all this wealth, but a trust comes with costs. So there are expenses that you have to take into account. So that means that it probably doesn't grow as much as it did while it was in your own name because of the extra costs, but there's no estate duty when you die. You die after 30 years of accumulating all this wealth, and you pass the assets on to the next generation. And there again, we have the next generation. They're really good at making money, and they then accumulate and accumulate. They then retire. And because the pots become so much bigger, they die, and the estate duty is even higher. So you're paying estate duty again on the assets that were inherited. If you put it into a trust, there's no more estate duty, and you can see there that the costs are definitely outweighed by the benefits. And after the 60-year period, because you now had 2 generations, generation 1, 30 years, generation 2, 30 years, the trust has grown 23 times, and assets in your own name have grown 11 times. That's a huge difference, and just gives you an example of what you can do by using structures and by doing correct estate planning. It's always very case specific, and we will go into that with each of you if you want us to run through what you've got and how it works. So moving on from there, we've now got these structures that we use all the time if you need them. And then you have all your investments. And I'm sure looking at that slide, you will see there are assets in there and there are structures. So we put in that trust, we put endowments. A lot of you either own or will own your own businesses, or you're a doctor and you have your own practice, so you're making money. And you can see there are offshore trusts, there are trusts. We've even got Bitcoin in there. We have an expert on Bitcoin on our team, and I hope that he's going to share how Bitcoin and blockchain work with you in one of our webinars. And there you can see there are investments, there are shares, there are unit trusts. We also have experts on those particular fields, and they will be talking to you as well. So what we do is we look at all of that. We'll teach you all about what you see there, a lot of which you will recognize. but you need to separate it so that you understand what is a structure, what is an investment. So we will then make it a lot simpler for you, we hope, and make sure that everything is in its little boxes so it's easy for you to know what to do. So in your structures, I think it's very important that you also understand your own name as a structure, joint names if you're married are, even if you're not married and have a partner, your business as a structure, and all of that needs to be planned correctly. And then on the other side of the page, here, the slide, you've got investments. And we've just listed some of them. There are many, many different products that you can invest in. And we will guide you through and teach you on the main asset categories, how they all work together, and what would be important for you. So from there, we go to what is our investment strategy? What is our process that we can help you with? What is it that we want to teach you about? We want to teach you about whether you should be investing offshore and onshore being South Africa, what's important, what's not important to you. We would then look at structuring. Was it helpful? We would look at what you can sleep with at night in terms of investing. So what your risk profile is very important. There's some people who can take risk and there's some that are risk averse. And one's got to be aware of how you fall into those categories and what's important for you. And then we'll take you through the investment processes that are involved, what the decision-making is, and it's very much a team effort. And we want to hear from you what it is that you would like to learn about. Because this is a learning series that we are undertaking here. And it's very important that it's a team effort. And there are a lot of factors that we will go into. I've given you broad strokes. And there are other topics that are also incredibly topical at the moment, particularly for South Africans. And because a lot of families are now dispersed all over the world, it's very important to know where everybody is and how everything affects a particular jurisdiction. So you see the other topics that we're going to cover is residency in other countries. Some of you may be or may have family in Australia. You may have family in Europe. UK is a very popular destination. The Netherlands is becoming more and more popular. The US as well, although that's a tricky one. But all those different destinations and all those different jurisdictions have an effect on you as a South African who may be leaving assets to somebody who lives somewhere else, or you may have a trust that wants to send assets to somewhere else. We need to understand the rules of all those different countries. So we'll take you through a bit of that so you can see how it works. A lot of you may either have emigrated or be emigrating, and the process has changed recently. We're always aware of how legislation changes, and you've got to keep up to date. So on the 1st of March, they changed all the rules on financial immigration. And whereas up until then, you had to submit your application to the Reserve Bank, you don't have to do that anymore. So the rules have all changed. So we would then be able to teach you and go through. We will have an expert on immigration talking to us so that you can understand what does and doesn't apply. Retirement products, I'm sure a lot of you who are starting out your working career have been told to invest in retirement annuities. Please don't until you understand the rules because they are beneficial, but they're not always beneficial. So we'll go into those kind of details as well. Marriage and divorce, what are the implications of those? It's an important topic, especially as everybody gets married, and hopefully very few of you are divorced or will get divorced, but it does happen. And it's just nice to know what the rules are that apply. Do you want to hear a webinar on property? Should you be investing in residential or commercial property? What are the differences? Are there advantages? Aren't there? Should you be investing in property offshore? And if you want to, how do you do that? We have all the contacts to do that. Retirement matters, I suppose that's your concerns about where do you want to be in 40 years' time. It's a long way away. and what kind of assets do you want to have accumulated, so that you've got a goal. Goals are very important here, and it does help you to keep focused. And I think one of the most important things that we'd like to talk about are family dynamics. Because it's fine when you're your nuclear family, but then things change and they become more and more involved, and the wealth becomes more and more complicated. And we've been doing this now for 30, 35 years, and we understand how it works and how you transfer it from the one generation to the other. It does depend on the quantum that we're talking about, but to manage those family dynamics and keep everybody on track, because you must remember families, you have a number of different characters in each family, is one of the things that we will explain to you, and how you cope in the future with whatever dynamics come your way. So that, in summary, is what we want to go through with you. But you can see there, we do want to know, and we won't have covered them all, but we'd really like to cover topics that you want to learn more about. And if we find it's a topic where we know enough to know when we don't know enough, we will then get an expert to do the presentation for us. So I think that's it for now. So I said it would be short and sweet. I hope it's been short and sweet. I never know how long I've spoken for. Half an hour, that's what I thought. And the next webinar will be on the 13th of July, and that we will start with what's important is establishing what your estate is, so that you understand how that works. Whether you do or don't need a will, have you got a will, haven't you got a will, etc., etc. So that'll be the next one, and then we'll roll one out every month after that until we're finished. So we've set up 6 for the time being. Kate's organized 6, and we do have topics that we want to cover, but we'd love to hear from you what topics you may have. And let's go on this journey and enjoy it together, and hopefully we will learn as well as that you do learn what we think you would like to know. Every day is a school day, I've learned after all these years, and I'd like that to be for all of us together. So I think that's it. Kate, do you want to round off? Okay. So we will send out the next invitation for the next one well in advance, so you know when it is. And I'd just like to thank you very, very much. I must say the attendance is amazing. I'm very grateful that you've all listened. And we really, really want to go on this journey with you. We look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thank you so much.